Critics love it, but players hate it. The Last of Us Part 2 sounds like it should have been called The Last Jedi Part 2. We've seen this kind of split before between critics and fans, and yeah, it's turning into quite the spectacle, and this is just the first day of release. This is Kneon, this is CLOWNFISH TV, and this is an update to a video we did last night about The Last of Us Part 2, a game I have no intention of purchasing. I just want to watch the shit show. Seriously, I have no intention of buying this game. I know too much about it, and I know too much about Naughty Dog striking channels for stupid reasons, just talking about leaks. Not going to buy this game. Got better things to do, but it is worth covering because it is such a massive, massive AAA release. And this is a cultural event, right? It's an event. It's also a huge controversy because it shows, once again, the split between critics and players or viewers, the audience, the consumer, and consumers are not happy. Not happy at all with this game. Some of them are. Look, you're allowed to be happy with it, but a lot of people were like, what the hell did I just play / watch / plunk down $60 for? So, divisive is a highly divisive sequel. That's what they're calling it. That's what a lot of publications are calling it now, a highly divisive sequel. Remember when they called The Last Jedi divisive? It was divisive. The critics loved it, but the fans, a lot of fans, hated it. And you know what happened? Yeah, Star Wars declining fortunes as Skywalker, Rise of Skywalker nears $1 billion, but way behind the last two films after the divisive The Last Jedi. And here we are again. So we're going to talk about the Metacritic scores on this game. We're going to talk about what people are saying. And I think as people play through the game, I mean, it's only been out, today? Came out today. Some people got preview copies. But as people have a chance to beat the game, play through the game, and digest what they've seen, including some naughty stuff, I think the opinions are gonna come fast and come hard. There's a joke in there, and it might have been intentional. But already the media is the media and the people behind the game are starting to build up a defense. Bots, we've heard this before, right? The Last Jedi, Russian bots were the only people who didn't like The Last Jedi. Now we've got The Last of Us 2 stars blaming the bots for negative reviews. And we're going to talk about those reviews. They're bad. They're really, really bad. Two of the game's stars, Laura Bailey and Shannon Woodward, are blaming the negativity on bots. And that's unfortunate. I really like Laura Bailey. I do. But bots? Come on. Last of Us Part 2 has been receiving universal acclaim from the standard games media with multiple perfect scores and overwhelming praise, earning it a 95 Metascore on Metacritic. Remember how The Last Jedi had like a 93 or some ridiculousness on Rotten Tomatoes, and people hated it. However, the same cannot be said for user reviews, where the tone is completely different. The game sits at an abysmal 3.4 rating with over twice as many negative ratings as positive ones. Taking to Twitter, Shannon Woodward, who voiced and did the motion capture for Dina, wrote that there were a lot of very upset bots afoot today, accompanied by the eyes emoji. All the bots, replied Laura Bailey, who voices Abby, in a since deleted tweet. From there, Woodward further insinuated that bots were responsible for negative reviews of the game by claiming that bot farms were fully activated, because it couldn't possibly be legitimate fan backlash. It can't possibly be that people don't like this game. The talk of bots is likely a reference back to the criticism that faced Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi, which faced a similar situation to The Last of Us Part 2. No shit. With The Last Jedi, it was received well by critics, but panned by fans, eventually leading to some blaming the scathing reviews on Russian bots and trolls. However, there are conflicting opinions on whether that was the case. It wasn't the case at all. It will be interesting to see how the public's opinion on the game changes as more players experience it for themselves and complete the campaign, which should take anywhere from 20 to 40 hours. Basically, it has to be bots because not enough people have played through the game. Forbes is getting in on this. The Last of Us Part 2 is getting predictably user score bombed on Metacritic. Here's the thing. People do know basically what happens in this game, and they've been unhappy about it for months, and they're going to take to any outlet that lets them voice their opinion. This happened, people say that it was review bombing on Captain Marvel and review bombing on Doctor Who and all of that. But the thing is look, people are saying, we don't like this. We think it's bullshit. We think it's bullshit what you did to Joel. We think it's bullshit. But they're pointing out that the game has only been out a few hours. As of the writing of this article, The Last of Us Part 2 has only been out for a few hours, and yet there's already a war raging over on Metacritic. The game is the newest battleground for user score bombing of a major release, where it has a 3.4 out of 10 score, as opposed to its 9.5 out of 10 critical consensus, which puts it as one of the top reviewed games of the generation. It's a masterpiece. I'm already seeing this being used as ammo for the critics are so out of touch with mainstream audience argument, but no, that's not what's happening here. So Paul Tassi from Forbes is basically saying that people are review bombing the game based on the leaks. They couldn't have possibly played through the game. But he's also saying people review bombing it because of the LGBT and trans characters. The spoilers for the game leaked out ahead of time were context free. Many people did not like the plot turns revealed. No, I actually saw the context of some of the more controversial decisions, and I can assure you, just my own personal opinion, they're bullshit. Perhaps the people who have played the initial hours and don't like the game, scoring it a 0 out of 10 for Clunky Controls after a few hours seems extreme. I do not recommend you read the user reviews, as they're full of spoilers. I can't say this is an organized campaign, because anytime you say that, you get asked to point to one specific organizer, which is rarely possible. But I do know a number of angry gamer YouTuber types that have been ranting about the game since the leaks, so I would not be surprised to count some of their viewers among the user bombers here. It's YouTube. Blame YouTube. God, I thought Paul Tassi was better than this. I really did. I actually like Paul Tassi. I agree with him a lot of the times, and we're not angry gamer YouTubers. We cover game news here and there. We're covering The Last of Us mostly because of all the controversy around it, and mostly because we do have some friends of ours that have been, their channels have been struck for simply talking about it, which we think is bullshit. I mean, regardless of how you feel about the game, just talking about spoilers without showing any actual footage from the game or talking about rumored spoilers and being able to have your channel get struck for that, it's a very dangerous precedent for companies to abuse the copyright system going forward. That's for everybody. That's for all of YouTube. If Sony gets away with it, then everybody else can get away with it too. And the next thing you know, you're not going to be allowed to be critical of anything on YouTube. These companies will shut you down unless you're part of the access media. So I think that's very, very dangerous. So no, I don't think it's organized. I think people just think that this whole thing is a bunch of bullshit. And again, we've got already haters silenced as The Last of Us Part 2 gets rave reviews. They don't care about the critical scores. This is what's going on. Let's refresh this. Metacritic, 95%. Universal acclaim based on 94 critical reviews. User score 3.3. 3.3 based on 16,000, almost 17,000 reviews. Critics are useless. Nobody should listen to them. They've proven that they're not to be trusted. A terrible sequel to a game that isn't even necessary. That's true. If anything, it's just a graphical demo of what is soon to be outdated console. Anyway, beginner's error. Never put two stories of two different characters in a 30-hour game. The franchise is about the story. Without the story, it means nothing. Oh boy, this game. Imagine a group of pink hat anti-drumpfers from 2016 got together and made a video game. Well, that actually happened, and it's called The Last of Us Part 2. If you want to watch a buff man lady called Abby get sodomized from behind by Neil Druckmann, then go ahead and buy this game. But if you want a game with a good story that doesn't spend all its time bending over to virtue signal, a game with good gameplay, a game with good performances, and a game that's immersive, go buy The Last of Us Part 1. Yeah, a lot of people disappointed. Expectations were subverted. Expectations were subverted. Do not watch the Abby scene from The Last of Us Part 2. 2020 isn't real. Nope. Nope. A lot of people noping out. And again, the issue I have with that, and I'll talk a little bit about that going forward here in a couple of minutes, is how can The Last of Us Part 2 slide by with a gratuitous sex scene with photorealistic characters, but Sony's going on the warpath censoring all these anime games that just show a little skin. Even Square Enix has had to censor 20-year-old Final Fantasy games to appease Sony. But Sony's first-party developers, Naughty Dog, they can put whatever the hell they want in games, apparently. Just bought The Last of Us 2 and found out you have to play as Abby. Maybe I need to go back to the store. Oh boy, give it a couple of weeks. Give it a couple of months. This is going to be one of those things, one of those cultural events. This is going to be to video games what The Last Jedi was to Star Wars. This might be to Sony what The Last Jedi was to Lucasfilm. This might be a colossal blow, and it might lead to consumer backlash that leads to less than stellar numbers for the PS5 when it comes out. I have no idea. I just know people aren't happy. They're really not happy about this game. So talking about these news outlets and how games get these perfect scores, there's an article out on One Angry Gamer based on this video from a former IGN reporter, Alana Pierce. She made this video talking about how this symbiotic relationship exists between game developers, game studios, and the outlets that cover them. And this is 100% true. Now, I did manage a theme park blog for quite some time, and it was the same kind of relationship that we had with Disney, where, we weren't necessarily being compensated financially, but if we wanted access, we wanted to get the ride-through videos before anybody else. We wanted to get to interview people. When a new movie would come out or a new ride would happen, we had to play ball. That's just the way that this whole thing works. And that's why a lot of people call them the access media. They get paid in access, they get paid in perks. So Alana Pierce says, for example, she said the claim that the leaks haven't impacted the pre-orders of The Last of Us 2. Probably not. Most people are going to be like, Last of Us 2? Hell yeah. Hell yeah, we're going to buy that. After the leaks, Amazon had a surplus of the sold-out collector's edition for The Last of Us 2. Additionally, GameStop currently has collector's editions available for purchase. As there's been no new printing, the new stock can exist only if people have terminated their pre-order. Anecdotally, thousands have said they're canceling their pre-orders. Yeah, we're not buying it. Just as they did with Resident Evil 3 Remake, Final Fantasy 7 Remake, and Gears 5. The latter of which saw the most significant launch week engagement and some of the lowest sales in franchise history. We bought Final Fantasy 7 Remake. And I knew exactly what I was getting. I knew it wasn't going to be a remake. And I can't say the game is bad. It's actually pretty good. It's very high quality. But I'm not happy with the fact that they decided they were going to deviate from the original storyline, and it's only a fraction of the full game. It's typical Square. You're going to have to buy umpteen parts to get the whole thing, and we may or may not finish it. Who the hell knows? And this is what we waited 15, 20 years for. Not what I was hoping for. Had they stuck with the original story and given us the entire game, or at least given us a timetable of when to expect the entire game, and not done the stupid time ghost bullshit, I would have liked it a little bit better. That is a personal opinion. You're allowed to disagree, and my God, if I mention Final Fantasy VII Remake, that I wasn't really on board with it, people freaking shriek. They shriek. So it's reasonable to say she's not giving her full candid opinion because she works for another news outlet. But this is what she's saying, and this is very true. This is her biggest criticism of games journalism. She says, I do think that in a lot of cases, writers write things for their peers rather than the audience. We see this in comics journalism too. We see it in anime journalism. We see it in theme park journalism. While that still means they're being honest, it does mean that we have all these reviewers who are buying into high art because they're passionate about the games industry and are very passionate about storytelling in video games. That's their perspective. I love DGM. Back in the day when I was a kid, freaking loved EGM, Electronic Gaming Monthly. Used to read it all the time because these were just like a bunch of guys who were consumers who bought games and gave you honest opinions whether or not it was worth spending 40 or 50 bucks on a game. You don't see that much anymore. It's also not necessarily the perspective, you know, most people who read your review are going to share. So this is what it comes down to. This is how this game got perfect 10s. I don't know if they were greasing the palms necessarily, but they said when a publisher gives you early access to content, when they give you exclusive previews, they're giving you relevance. Relevance translates into money. When you don't have the relevance, you have fewer views and make less money. If you don't make enough money, you can't sustain operations and you go out of business. In this case, you know, Sony's going to be spending a shit ton of money on advertising. If you want those advertising dollars are getting harder to come by. Then you're going to play ball. Sony's probably not going to play ball with a website that writes a bunch of hit pieces about The Last of Us Part 2. So again, you're just naturally gonna have some bias, right? Why do all these Disney websites rave about everything Disney does? Because they know if they don't, they're not gonna get invited to the next media preview event. That's how that works. So just to follow up a little bit on the last video I did about this, Black Sage D, who I recommend you follow on Twitter, seems like a pretty cool guy. Thanked us for talking about how Sony has a double standard when it comes to censorship, but I did not realize how far the rabbit hole went. Unfortunately, the situation has burned quite deeper than you imagine. So bad that even the creator of Senran Kagura, is that right? Kenichio Takaki had to leave his company because of it, thus leaving Senran Kagura 7 in limbo. So, yeah, I read this. This is from last year. He said he had to leave Marvelous due to recent policies and joins Cygames. So basically, the censorship is so out of control that this guy had to leave his company. According to Takaki, the biggest reason he left Marvelous is due to the recent policies that have restricted sexual depictions. He personally felt a thread snap with that. He says that while sexual content tends to get criticized a lot, it has just as much people who want to enjoy it. Okay, again, we're talking anime characters. We're talking cartoony anime characters, but The Last of Us Part 2 can have a full-blown R, X-rated scene in the game, and that's totally fine. It's actually being applauded by some people. But you're not allowed to show any anime skin. I don't understand the double standard. Takaki always believed that such variety is one of the things that supported the games industry. But after realizing how easily that could be broken, it made him think about other things. So he's going to go work on fantasy games now. But yeah, so there are projects being left in limbo because of Sony's ridiculous censorship policies. And, you know, it's really weird. Like Final Fantasy VIII, it still blows my mind. Renoa, they put her in a sports bra like they did with Tifa to cover them up a little bit more. And I think it was it Shiva or Siren? It might have been both of them. Two of the female summons, they covered them up more. And we're talking about games that were basically PG games that came out in the 1990s. You know, it's crazy that we've gone backwards. You know, again, it's perfectly acceptable to show a full-on photorealistic sex scene as long as it's inclusive, but you can't show anime titties. It blows my mind. That's where we're at. You know, we're going backwards. We're going backwards. What the hell's going on? Anyway, it's going to be interesting to watch this situation from a cultural standpoint. Because, yeah, here we go. Sony. Last of Us 2, guys. Hey, everybody. Sony, care to explain how this is allowed with your policy on sexual content? Yeah, good question. I'd like to know the answer. I'm sure Takaki would like to know the answer. Lots of people would like to know the answer. I'm going to wrap it up. Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, and we'll talk later. Hey guys, thanks for watching Clownfish TV. Please consider supporting the channel. Go to clownfishsupport.com. That's clownfishsupport.com. And if you want to join our community, go to clownfishtalk.com. That's clownfishtalk.com. Please subscribe, ring the bell for notifications. We will talk to you next time.